Can you play E minor instead of E major on the
Hey,
ukulele?
Doc. And here I want to do a quick little video about a discussion I saw on our Reddit, our ukulele on Reddit yesterday. It was a discussion about like E major and how hard E major is, and that's a common thing for ukulele. It can be a hard chord. Even now, sometimes I struggle with it. I'll unintentionally mute that note, so you got to work on that. And there was a lot of good suggestions, different fingerings. I'm not going to get into that because I have another video on that somewhere, and people do this all the time. So I don't need to wade into an easier way to play E major. But one thing was someone posted something that I thought was a funny comment and also a good comment in a way. And they posted they never figured out E major, I think, and they just play E minor instead. And it got downvoted. And in a way, I understand that. In another way, I disagree with it. Because that person is both wrong and right. If you're going someplace and you're expected to play an E major, you should probably play an E major chord. You should probably learn how to play all the chords that you need to know how to play. Probably, if you want to be like a great professional musician. But if you're just having fun or you're just playing, whatever, you don't really have to worry so much about always having to play by the rules. And what are these rules? The rules that we talk about, music theory. Music theory is just a way to explain why things sound good. They aren't really a set of rules. And when we talk about music theory, we're mostly talking about like Western European descended music theory of like classical music and Western art music or whatever. Adam Neely has a good video on this, basically. It's a very long one, but is music theory racist? And the answer is no, that's silly, but also yes, kind of. And the crux of that is we spend all this time studying this European music theory, when in reality, especially here in like America, a lot of our pop music and the music that we listen to doesn't follow that theory. It might be informed by blues tonality, which is something that informs most of the American descended music styles. Blues tonality, it's just a different set of theory. It descends from it comes from the slaves. It was sort of the amalgam slave culture that was forced to be created in the Caribbean before they were brought to America. It was an amalgam of mostly West African, but also Central and East African peoples who were enslaved and brought to the Caribbean, Haiti and Jamaica and places like that, and forced to live together with no common language or religion possibly, or anything in common. And they created an amalgam culture that was then brought to the United States and interacted with other cultures, the immigrants from Ireland and Scotland and England, and to a lesser degree France and Germany, and the indigenous population too, of course. And that created it informed all the folk musics. But what we got from that amalgam culture was like blues tonality, like the mixture of minor and major together. That informs a lot of our modern music, pop music, but especially like blues and things. And so what I just wanted to get at was what this person said is playing E minor instead of E major. It's not right, but it's not wrong all the time either. There's a lot of places where you can get away with that. I think one thing I remember is when I was a kid, I was trying to learn how to play Polly by Nirvana. Obviously that's a controversial song. We won't get into that. But the chord progression, I believe, goes. When I was a kid, I remember thinking, E minor, E major sounds good there too. Obviously, that's not the way Nirvana wanted to be played. They wanted to be playing E minor. But that's a good example of how, let's take out the melody, how a chord progression could sound good with both options. Now, yeah, maybe this sounds better. Maybe that's because we've heard it so many times. This sounds pretty good too, in my opinion. But again, that's just an example of experimentation. What's like a documented case of E minor versus E major. And there's you'll find this a lot in old folk fiddle tunes, folk songs, bluegrass tunes. What you'll find is you'll have a song, and some people will do it in Mixolydian, some people will do it in Dorian. aka some people will do it in a major key and some people will do it in a minor key. Now granted, we're not talking about Ionian versus Aeolian, we're not talking about minor versus major, we're straight minor versus straight major, we're talking about Dorian versus Mixolydian, but still the concept of changing the E minor chord to the E major chord holds true here. You can do that and it can sound good, especially when the melody is like a really bluesy or pentatonic based melody that would sound equally good over A minor or E minor or E major, you know? So just to make this easier, let's transpose this a little bit instead of discussing E major versus E minor, because like I said, was a discussion because E major can be difficult, right? Let's discuss A minor versus A major. That's easy for everybody. So let's take the same discussion and just make it an easier chord to finger, okay? So A minor versus A major. So the idea is, if you see an A major in a song, can you change it to an A minor? Most of the time, probably not, but sometimes, yeah. Now, when can you do it? Like we just said, when it sounds good, that can be the end of the discussion. If it sounds good in the whole song and everyone's happy with it, fuck it and go for it. But here's like a concrete example of let's do Cluck Old Hen. So Cluck Old Hen, it's a classic fiddle tune. If you're a bluegrass player, an old time player, if you're a mandolin or a fiddle player or a banjo player, I bet you know the song. Cluck Old Hen. It's probably descends from African Americans. So that's where the blues tonality comes in hand. Although, like I said, blues tonality now informs like all of our music. But yeah, Cluck Old Hen is usually done in A, but you can do it in any key. But a lot of these jam-oriented songs will be done in a specific key. So it's usually done in A, and they'll say A, and you'll be expected to know how to play it. And you'll have to figure out who you're playing with, basically, or you can ask, but if they're doing it in Mixolydian or in Dorian. Now, generally speaking, I find that bluegrass players will do it in Mixolydian, and more old-time folky guys will do it in Dorian. But that's not 100% either. I've heard it the other way both times. And it sounds great both ways. It's just a different flavor. So let's look at that a little bit right now. So what I'll do is I'll record like a version of the song over so that it sounds good in time and everything, and I'll demonstrate it. But right now I'll just demonstrate it to you out of time, real quick. So Cluck Old Hen, all right, fiddle tune, either Mixolydian or Dorian. It's 2 chords either way. Either way, the second chord is G. So no matter if we're going with A major or A minor, the second chord is G. But yeah, like I said, if you're doing it in Mixolydian, you're going to be going A, G. But you can also play it in Dorian this way with A minor. Like I said, this came about because of basically the forced enslavement of these people. They developed their music and interacted with other musics. This blues tonality worked really well with some stuff that was really hot coming out of Scotland and Ireland. You know, over there, people loved Dorian mode, they loved Mixolydian mode, and the sort of combination of those two was like chocolate and peanut butter with blues tonality, you know what I mean? And it basically, blues tonality came in and said, oh, it doesn't matter if you're Dorian or Mixolydian, we'll work with both of you. And it was great. So Cluck Old Hen, cluck and sing, ain't laid an egg since way last spring. Cluck Old Hen, cluck and squall, ain't laid an egg since way last fall. Cluck Old Hen, cluck and sing, ain't laid an egg since way last spring. Cluck Old Hen, cluck and squall, ain't laid an egg since way last fall. See, it works pretty well with both of them. But I'm not a very good singer, so why don't I just show you real quick 2 different videos of me doing it both ways, okay? Alright, so thanks for watching, and I guess the moral of this is just, if you think someone's saying something stupid musically, it might not be so stupid. I mean, maybe it is, but maybe it's genius.